And so you might want to use a different payment thing for that. I know Ethereum is trying to scale up, and they have plans for this thing called Shasper, which is the sharding, and the Casper. Casper basically being Byzantine fault, a modified Byzantine fault tolerance combined with proof of stake Casper protocol consensus algorithm. And so that's supposed to be really revolutionary, or really maybe not revolutionary, but it's supposed to be a big step up from what they have currently. And then combine that with sharding, which will have parallel networks working in tandem that will have checkpoints and then feed back that information into the main Ethereum chain. So if they can get those going live soon, sometime in 2019 or 2020, then Ethereum should be able to handle orders of magnitude more transactions per unit time, and also open up the road for more scalability overall and long term. But nonetheless, you might look at other type of payment networks for really micro payments, maybe between the Internet of Things. You might want to use like a mesh network. I know IOTA is working on something like that. I think Stellar has some kind of proof of stake protocol. I don't know if they use delegated proof of stake. And so anyway, what I'm going with all this is that I think, you're going to have a lot of different use cases. You're going to have different types of assets on blockchains. You're going to have houses and cars and things that contracts that you register, and so we're going to be taking out a lot of the middlemen like notaries and a lot of public administrators and tellers and bankers and things like that. I think a lot of these positions and a lot of these type of jobs, and even probably eventually some attorney jobs, they're going to need to evolve, or they're going to get obsoleted by some of this technology. Because at the end of the day, what blockchain does is it outsources trust. So with finance and with banking and with money, you have all these different parties and counterparties that it's a giant trust network that's mediated by people who are in these positions to validate transactions, authenticate transactions, and notarize assets and notarize contracts, right? Once you automate that through smart contracts, once you automate that through a programming language that is unhackable on a blockchain that is irreversible and that's secure and that's scalable and that's sufficiently decentralized, now all of a sudden you take out a lot of the friction in some of these different industries. And I think the end result really is going to be hyper liquidity of assets, hyper liquidity of commodities, hyper liquidity of finance and money in general. And that can only lead to one thing, which is I personally think it'll be an explosion of productivity and prosperity, especially in places that currently don't have it. So another use case for this kind of stuff would be like microfinancing and microlending in nations that don't have access to loans and don't have access to banks. So a lot of people, I don't know the exact number, but I know there's a lot of people, or a huge percentage of the population around the world don't have access to banks, especially in third world countries. And a lot of them don't have access to computers. But cell phones and internet connection are, in a sense, a low-hanging fruit. And so especially in a place like rural Africa, it's a lot easier to get in a cell phone tower than it is to build an entire electrical utility grade infrastructure to get these guys power. So if you have a cell phone connection and you have a cell phone, you have like some way to charge these cell phones with just like a local microgrid using solar panels or whatever it is, they can have an internet connection, and now they have access to, or eventually they'll have an access to a decentralized application that allows them to request loans for a micro business or a small business. Maybe they want to start producing and selling plantains and shipping those around the world, small farm to table plantains or yucca, or what's the one palm, red palm oil, something like that. And then you have someone in another country that says, sure, I'll loan you, $20 with a 5%, 10% interest or whatever over 2 years. Yeah, that's nothing to some people, but in other nations where money is really, really tight, or they don't have access to that kind of things, it can make a big difference. So I think that'll be a huge use case in the future as well. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot to work out. But yeah. So in short, I think it doesn't make sense to me to just focus on one blockchain and think that's the end all be all. I think there's going to be a lot of interoperating blockchains that have that are really optimized for different use cases, and that's good. I think there needs to be diversity in the space, and there needs to be different approaches and different methods tried and tested, because it's difficult to say right now what is the best and what is the optimal, right? And so that can only be a good thing. And ultimately, all blockchains are really plagued with the same trilemma of issues. So I wouldn't really say plague, but basically you have a scalability issue, you have a decentralization issue, and you have the security issue. So in general, you can have two of those things, and the third one you have to sacrifice a little bit on. So you can have security and you can have scalability, but you won't necessarily be decentralized. You can have decentralization, you can have scalability, but you might not be very secure. So that's a really big problem, and it's something that I think some of the best minds in the space are trying to work on. And I know like Vlad Simfir and Vitalik Buterin and their modified Byzantine proof, Byzantine fault tolerance, and Casper proof of stake protocol combined with sharding. I believe that they're trying to find a balance or strike a healthy balance between those three things. But it's a difficult problem, and I think there's going to be a lot of different approaches coming forward. You might see it with Stellar taking a certain approach, or some of these privacy-centric coins like Monero or Dash, or I think Dash has a delegated proof of stake protocol, and then you have Zcash, and you have EOS, Cardano. They're going to take slightly different approaches to solve some of these problems, because yeah. So what else? So another thing I want to talk about, and on a related note, is that another thing that I want to talk about, and on a related note, is the current state of the market and what the future holds. And the blockchain space in general has gone through these kind of not necessarily predictable, but reoccurring boom and bust cycles. And it goes back really to the advent of Bitcoin and when Bitcoin first came out. So when Bitcoin first came out, I think it was fractions of a cent was really what it was going for. And then it'd go up to like 10 cents, and then it dropped back down for a while and be worth like a penny. And then it would shoot up again after many, many months or a year or so. And then it would go up to $5, $10, and everyone's like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then it dropped back down to $1, and everyone thought it was dead and wasn't going anywhere. Then it would shoot up to like $30, $40, and it dropped back down. Then it shot up to $300 and dropped back down. Then it shot up to $1,000 and dropped back down to $200 for a while. And then it went up to like $300, $400. And that's actually when I bought some. I bought like 10 at like $300 or $400 a few years ago. And then it went up to $600, $700, and I just held on to it. And then it went back down to like 400, and I just sold them all. Back then I made like $1,000, and I just thought I was a pretty cool guy. And now I'm just like, shit, I'm kind of kicking myself, right? And so, and then it went up to the, almost $20,000, I think it reached, and not too long ago. And then it dropped back down, and now it's settled out at 6,500 or so. And the most recent peak was last December, January. And there was a lot of people that were buying on the way up. I had some friends that were buying a fair amount on the way up near the peak, because they thought it was going to just keep going up. And, nothing does that. Nothing goes up forever. It doesn't matter what it is. And then it dropped back down and had an epic crash, and people were freaking out. Like, oh, I refinanced, or I sold my home to buy all into crypto. I sold my car and my child's college fund, and I thought it was gonna go forever. Now I'm broke, and oh, this sucks. Like, man, word of advice: don't ever invest money you can't afford to lose in anything. I don't care what it is. Even if it's someone tells you it's 100% full proof to get double your money in a day. Don't ever do that. Only invest what you can afford to lose, and only invest discretionary income that's not going to affect your overall well-being or your family's well-being, especially. So it's just a word of advice. I know you've probably all heard that a million times, but that's don't get overwhelmed and don't get overhyped by the irrational exuberance. Because anytime markets get really, really hot and they go up really, really fast, there's a lot of irrational exuberance and people freaking out, thinking they're going to be overnight millionaires. And then when it drops really, really quickly, there's irrational desperation. So it goes both ways. And so you see irrational buying as it's going up, and then you see irrational selling and it's going down really fast. And the best advice I could give is read about the technology, understand the different pros and cons and the different groups that are working on different blockchains, and track the ones that you think are the most promising, and track the teams that are doing a lot of work and publishing a lot of new code and updates and meaningful code and meaningful updates on GitHub. Are they aligning themselves with different partners regularly? Do they have a lot of businesses that are interested? Do they have a large network and a high node account? Are they reasonably decentralized? What are their plans for their future roadmap? How are they going to upgrade the protocol? Pay attention to all these things. And I know there's a ton of information out there, and so it's impossible to know it all and understand it all, but it's just like anything. It's the more you know about a space and the more you know about an industry, the more you're going to be equipped and the more you're going to be well prepared to make the right decisions when they need to be made. And so my personal opinion is that we haven't really seen anything yet. It's still very, very early. And people who think that blockchain is just a fad, or it was just like this thing that peaked out and everything is going to go to zero, or certain things are going to go to zero after that, I think they're missing the bigger picture. So comparing it to the dot-com boom, I think peaked out at a couple trillion back in the 90s, and that was just the U.S. And that was when the internet was just getting started, and the infrastructure wasn't nearly what it is today. And so with blockchain, thinking that 800 billion or so peak market cap of last January, last December, people thinking it's never gonna see that again or won't for a long time. I think that's just insane. Like we're not even scratching the surface yet what this is gonna disrupt and what it's gonna change. So exactly when it goes up again or when it goes to the next peak, difficult to say. It could be 6 months, it could be 3 to 5 years. Nobody really knows. But I do think that the next time it peaks, it'll probably be at least 3 to 5 times higher than what the last one was. Probably somewhere around there, but it's difficult to say when it'll come, and it's difficult to say if the entire crypto market cap will go up together like it did last time, or if you'll see only a handful of projects really move the entire market cap up, and where the other ones will kind of stay stagnant or just slowly dissolve into nothing. It's very difficult to say. But will more money come into the space overall, and will some of these projects come out with some real world, high volume use applications? Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm 100% sure of that. And I not only say that rationally, because I've been reading about this stuff for a number of years now, and I've been tracking the trends, and I've been watching the charts, and I've been reading about what projects are good and which ones are not so good, but also intuitively, I feel it, I can tell. And the other thing is, and the other third part I always like to do, the gut check, is my imagination. Does this satisfy my imagination looking forward? Absolutely. Yes, blockchain very much tickles my imagination. You can imagine all the possibilities for it. You can see it. It's coming. And it's not far-fetched to the point where it's impossible to do, nor is it far-fetched to the point where it's just fantasy. This stuff's coming. It's coming fast. It's being developed right now, and it's going to disrupt everything. And the future is bright. It's going to be good. So pay attention. Read as much as you can about it. And don't give in to irrational exuberance when it's going up, and don't give in to irrational exuberance going down. If you believe in the technology and you think this stuff is here to stay and it's going to be a major disruptor of many aspects and many facets of our life moving forward within the next 5-10 years, then take a long position.